Reluctant Dragon by Kenneth Grahame.
The dragon told stories of old times, when dragons were quite plentiful, and the world was a livelier place than it is now, and life was full of thrills and jumps and surprises. What the boy feared, however, soon came to pass. The most modest and retiring dragon in the world, if he's as big as 4 cart horses and covered with blue scales, cannot keep altogether out of the public view. And so in the village of the Tavern of Nights, the fact that a real live dragon sat brooding in the cave on the downs was naturally a subject for talk. Though the villagers were extremely frightened, they were rather proud as well. It was a distinction to have a dragon of your own, and it was felt to be a feather in the cap of the village. Still, all were agreed that this sort of thing couldn't be allowed to go on. The dreadful beast must be exterminated. The countryside must be freed from this pest, this terror, this destroying scourge. The fact that not even a hen roost was the worst for the dragon's arrival wasn't allowed to have anything to do with it. He was a dragon, and he couldn't deny it, and if he didn't choose to behave as such, that was his own lookout. But in spite of such valiant talk, no hero was found willing to take sword and spear and free the suffering village and win deathless fame, and each night's heated discussion always ended in nothing. Meanwhile, the dragon, a happy bohemian, lolled on the turf, enjoyed the sunsets, told antediluvian anecdotes to the boy, and polished his old verses while meditating on fresh ones. One day, the boy, on walking into the village, found everything wearing a festal appearance which was not to be accounted for in the calendar. Carpets and gay-colored stuffs were hung out of the windows, the church bells clamored noisily, the little street was flower-strewn, and the whole population jostled each other along either side of it, chattering, shoving, and ordering each other to stand back. The boy saw a friend of his own age in the crowd and hailed him. "What's up?" he cried. "Is it the players, or bears, or a circus, or what?" "It's all right," his friend hailed back. "He's a-comin'." "Who's a-comin'?" demanded the boy, thrusting into the throng. "Why, St. George, of course," replied his friend. "He's heard tell of our dragon, and he's a-comin' on purpose to slay the deadly beast and free us from his horrid yoke. Oh my, won't there be a jolly fight!" Here was news indeed. The boy felt that he ought to make quite sure for himself, and he wriggled himself in between the legs of his good-natured elders, abusing them all the time for their unmannerly habit of shoving. Once in the front rank, he breathlessly awaited the arrival. Presently, from the far-away end of the line came the sound of cheering. Next, the measured tramp of a great war-horse made his heart beat quicker, and then he found himself cheering with the rest, amidst welcoming shouts, shrill cries of women, uplifting of babies, and waving of handkerchiefs. St. George paced slowly up the street. The boy's heart stood still as he breathed with sobs. The beauty and the grace of the hero were so far beyond anything he had yet seen. His fluted armor was inlaid with gold, his plumed helmet hung at his saddle-bow, and his thick, fair hair framed a face gracious and gentle beyond expression, till you caught the sternness of his eyes. He drew rein in front of the little inn, and the villagers crowded round with greetings and thanks and voluble statements of their wrongs and grievances and oppressions. The boy heard the grave, gentle voice of the saint, assuring them that all would be well now, and that he would stand by them and see them righted and free them from their foe. Then he dismounted and passed through the doorway, and the crowd poured in after him. But the boy made off up the hill as fast as he could lay his legs to the ground. "It's all up, dragon!" he shouted as soon as he was within sight of the beast. "He's coming! He's here now! You'll have to pull yourself together and do something at last!" The dragon was licking his scales and rubbing them with a bit of house flannel the boy's mother had lent him, till he shone like a great turquoise. "Don't be violent, boy," he said without looking round. "Sit down and get your breath, and try and remember that the noun governs the verb. And then perhaps you'll be able to be good enough to tell me who's coming." "That's right, take it coolly," said the boy. "Hope you'll be half as cool when I've got through my news. It's only St. George who's coming, that's all. He rode into village half an hour ago. Of course you can lick him, a great big fellow like you. But I thought I'd warn you, 'cause he's sure to be round early, and he's got the longest, wickedest looking spear you ever did see." And the boy got up and began to jump round in sheer delight at the prospect of the battle. "Oh, dearie, dearie me," moaned the dragon. "This is too awful. I won't see him, and that's flat. I don't want to know the fellow at all. I'm sure he's not nice. You must tell him to go away at once, please. Say he can write if he likes, but I can't give him an interview. I'm not seeing anybody at present." "Now, dragon, dragon," said the boy imploringly, "don't be perverse and wrong-headed. You've got to fight him sometime or other, you know, 'cause he's St. George, and you're the dragon. Better get it over, and then we can go on with the sonnets, and you ought to consider other people, too. It's been dull up here for you. Think how dull it's been for me." "My dear little man," said the dragon solemnly, "just understand, once for all, that I can't fight, and I won't fight. I've never fought in my life, and I'm not going to begin now, just to give you a Roman holiday. In old days, I always let the other fellows, the honest fellows, do all the fighting, and no doubt that's why I have the pleasure of being here now." "But if you don't fight, he'll cut your head off," gasped the boy, miserable at the prospect of losing both his fight and his friend. "Oh, I think not," said the dragon in his lazy way. "You'll be able to arrange something. I've every confidence in you. You're such a manager. Just run down, there's a dear chap, and make it all right. I'll leave it entirely to you." The boy made his way back to the village in a state of great despondency. First of all, there wasn't going to be any fight. Next, his dear and honored friend, the dragon, hadn't shown up in quite such a heroic light as he would have liked. And lastly, whether the dragon was a hero at heart or no, it made no difference, for St. George would most undoubtedly cut his head off. "Arrange things, indeed," he said bitterly to himself. "The dragon treats the whole affair as if it was an invitation to tea and croquet." The villagers were straggling homeward as he passed up the street, all of them in the highest spirits, and gleefully discussing the splendid fight that was in store. The boy pursued his way to the inn, and passed into the principal chamber, where St. George now sat alone, musing over the chances of the fight, and the sad stories of rapine and of wrong that had so lately been poured into his sympathetic ears. "May I come in, St. George?" said the boy politely as he paused at the door. "I want to talk to you about this little matter of the dragon, if you're not tired of it by this time." "Yes, come in, boy," said the saint kindly. "Another tale of misery and wrong, I fear me. Is it a kind parent, then, of whom the tyrant has bereft you, or some tender sister or brother? Well, it shall soon be avenged." "Nothing of the sort," said the boy. "There's been a misunderstanding somewhere, and I want to put it right. The fact is, this is a good dragon." "Exactly," said St. George, smiling pleasantly. "I quite understand. A good dragon. Believe me, I do not in the least regret that he is an adversary worthy of my steel, and no feeble specimen of his noxious tribe." "But he's not a noxious tribe," cried the boy distressedly. Oh dear, how stupid men are when they get an idea in their heads. I tell you, he's a good dragon, and a friend of mine, and he tells me the most beautiful stories you ever heard, all about old times when he was little, and he's been so kind to mother, and mother'd do anything for him. And father likes him too, though father doesn't hold with art and poetry much, and always falls asleep when the dragon starts talking about style. But the fact is, nobody can help liking him once they know him. He's so engaging and so trustful and as simple as a child." "Sit down and draw your chair up," said St. George. "I like a fellow who sticks up for his friends, and I'm sure the dragon has his good points, if he's got a friend like you. But that's not the question. All this evening I've been listening, with grief and anguish unspeakable, to tales of murder, theft, and wrong, rather too highly coloured, perhaps. Not always quite convincing, but forming in the main a most serious role of crime. History teaches us that the greatest rascals often possess all the domestic virtues, and I fear your cultivated friend, in spite of all the qualities which have won, and rightly, your regard, has got to be speedily exterminated." "Oh, you've been taking in all the yarns those fellows have been telling you," said the boy impatiently. "Why, our villagers are the biggest storytellers in all the country round. It's a known fact. You're a stranger in these parts, or else you'd have learned it already. All they want is a fight. They're the most awful beggars for getting up fights. It's meat and drink to them. Dogs, bulls, dragons, anything so long as it's a fight. Why, they've got a poor, innocent badger in the stable behind there at this moment. They were going to have some fun with him today, but they're saving him up now till your little affair's over. And I've no doubt they've been telling you what a hero you were, and how you were bound to win in the case of right and justice and so on. But let me tell you, I came down the street just now, and they were betting 6-4 on the dragon freely." "6-4 on the dragon," murmured St. George sadly, resting his cheek on his hand. "This is an evil world, and sometimes I begin to think that all the wickedness in it is not entirely bottled up inside the dragons. And yet, may not this wily beast have misled you as to his real character, in order that your good report of him may serve as a cloak for his evil deeds? Nay, may there not be at this very moment some hapless princess immured within yonder gloomy cavern?" The moment he had spoken, St. George was sorry for what he had said. The boy looked so genuinely distressed. "I assure you, St. George," he said earnestly, "there's nothing of the sort in the cave at all. The dragon's a real gentleman, every inch of him, and I may say that no one would be more shocked and grieved than he would at hearing you talk in that loose way about matters on which he has very strong views." "Well, perhaps I've been over-credulous," said St. George. "Perhaps I've misjudged the animal. What are we to do? Here are the dragon and I, almost face to face, each supposed to be thirsting for each other's blood. I don't see any way out of it exactly. What do you suggest? Can't you arrange things somehow?" "That's just what the dragon said," replied the boy, rather nettled. "Really, the way you two seem to leave everything to me. I suppose you couldn't be persuaded to go away quietly, could you?"
"Impossible, I fear," said the saint. "Quite against the rules. You know that as well as I do."
"Well then, look here," said the boy. "It's early yet. Would you mind strolling up with me and seeing the dragon and talking it over? It's not far, and any friend of mine will be most welcome."
"Well, it's irregular," said St. George, rising, "but really it seems about the most sensible thing to do. You're taking a lot of trouble on your friend's account," he added good-naturedly as they passed through the door together. "But cheer up. Perhaps there won't have to be any fight after all." "Oh, but I hope there will be, though," replied the little fellow wistfully.